Who can take a flower, roll it up and make it fine, sprinkle it with knowledge and a little bit of time, cover it with headlines and a sweet euphoria too. Cannabis Man, Cannabis Man, Cannabis Man, spreading news and joy across the land, diving deep into the growing green. Cannabis Man, we're all king.
Hello there, and welcome in to the Cannabis Man Podcast. Thank you so much for clicking on the show. I am your host, Don Kleppen, and I really appreciate you listening in, whether you're returning, if you've been listening for the 2.5+ years I've been doing the show, or if it's your first time here. Welcome back. Really can't thank you for checking this out with me. And this is a programming note here, going to be the final episode of 2024. So if you are looking for new episodes after this one comes out, just bear with me. I'm taking the holidays off, going to spend some time with my family. It has been a long year, been a huge year for cannabis, and I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a rundown of some of the news that's come out. Going to share some new news stories with you, as I like to do on this podcast. I also have, as I typically do, a conversation with an expert in this space, an entrepreneur who has some products out there that you're really going to want to hear about, and you might want to give them a try for yourself, because I think they're perfect for the holidays, but also perfect for any time of the year. This is a very fun guy that I've got joining us today, and he's got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. He's making some wonderful, wonderful products. If it is your first time here, this is a show where I try to take a more journalistic look at cannabis, but what I'm really trying to do is just spread some of the information that's out there in terms of what quality of life improvements cannabis may offer you. I say on the show all the time that I am pro-cannabis, but I don't believe that it's necessarily right for everybody. When people say that they tried it and it's not for them, I believe them. And that's fine. You know, it doesn't really affect my enjoyment of it one way or the other. But I do believe there are a lot of people out there who could benefit from it and who maybe never gave it a shot because of last century's propaganda, because of the reefer madness stuff that a lot of us who went to public education systems in America were brought up with those DARE officers coming into our classrooms and, you know, showing us the videos of scrambled eggs and stuff and all these things, those connotations and that stigma around cannabis still lingers. And so when it started to become legalized in America across the states, starting in 2014 for recreational users in Colorado and Washington, and then moving around the country, different states doing the same, and then it was legalized here in Illinois back in 2020. And I'm a broadcaster. I've done podcasts before here, and I'm a personal cannabis user of almost 20 years. And so when it was legalized, I was so excited for these conversations to start trickling out in the legacy media channels, you know, radio, TV, these places that people traditionally turn to for their news and information. And what I quickly saw was that there was a failure, in my view, of those legacy media channels, and that failure continues today because they are still, for some reason, most of them, they're more comfortable, in my view, sharing the same old propaganda, the same stereotypes, the same, as I like to call them, Cheech and Chong jokes, rather than diving in and trying to parse the real information out there for people and what quality of life benefits cannabis has and can offer to those, as well as just kind of covering the great research and stuff that's being looked into today around the country. And it is a very exciting time for us stoners, for us can enthusiasts out there, because there has never been this kind of momentum in favor of legalizing cannabis. And the fact that it has been in various states, and the fact that they're weighing rescheduling it right now, moving it down from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3, this is a very exciting time. And so my aim with this show is to share that exact information with you. I like to speak with experts like I'm doing today, whether they are entrepreneurs, product or service creators, or doctors, researchers, scientists who are looking to answer those questions. We still have politicians, elected or appointed leaders who are now making the rules that are going to serve as the foundation for legal cannabis going forward. And of course, I'll also talk with others in the space like me who are covering it, whether they're journalists, if they're authors of newspaper articles, if they're podcasters, if they're hosts of shows, whoever's doing it, covering the space, I'll talk with them as well. This is really just an effort of me putting together some conversations that can hopefully offer a little bit of enlightenment or maybe give you a starting point to do your own research and figure out which products or how cannabis might fit into your life to solve a problem that you've been having. And on that note, I also, of course, will share the latest news stories, headlines, perspectives that, sort of chronicling this ever-changing green frontier that is shifting before our eyes every single day. There's cannabis news every day of the week, and so that's what I like to bring to you here, as well as some product reviews, tell you about who's making what and what I think is worth your time to go try and your money to go spend and give these things a shot. I like to include the news joint rap. I also like to have some fun with the haiku, write a little poetry, and kind of just cap off the episode after going through some of the oftentimes depressing news stories that I can on the show, whether relating to cannabis or, any other things. The news can just be a little bit of a downer a lot of the time. So having some fun with haikus and just kind of, finding some humor, some levity to just, weave in here. I like to do that as well here on the Cannabis Man Podcast. If you haven't already, leave a rating or review for the show, if you please. Whether you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, there's a function there to leave a rating, review, comment, and of course, subscribe to the show. All of that helps me out a lot. You can also follow the show on social media. All the handles are down in the description notes there, and you can subscribe to the Weekly Chronic newsletter, which is something I started earlier this year. One of the many changes that 2024 brought. I decided that a weekly podcast was, I was missing a lot of news stories, and I want to bring you as much as I can. And so the Weekly Chronic is a free newsletter. You can subscribe through the description link below, or go to Substack and just search for the Weekly Chronic. You can subscribe there. It's free. And I release new issues every Tuesday with other news stories that I don't get to on these episodes, some other interviews and product reviews as well. It's really, think of it as kind of a continuation of the podcast between these Fridays when I release new episodes. And I really, really have enjoyed doing both of these, and I look forward to all the excitement that 2025 has to bring. These past couple of years have been wonderful. I have loved being in this space. I've loved seeing these news stories break. I've been loving parsing this new information for you, and I love trying all these new cannabis products and kind of telling you who's doing what and what you should keep an eye out for wherever you might be in the world. It's really been a privilege, and it's also something that I think is important. This is kind of, for whatever reason, this is the mission that I've settled on. I really don't feel like resting until cannabis is just as accessible out there to the world as substances like alcohol, caffeine, sugar, as much as those have become easily accessible, and in some cases like sugar so ubiquitous that you don't even think about them unless you're looking at a nutrition label. I'm not saying that I'm looking for that as a future for cannabis here, but what I am saying is that I think a lot of people out there, we're all adults, and if those of us who have found cannabis has a place in our lives, we should be afforded the same freedoms to use it normally as those people who feel the same way about alcohol and caffeine and whatnot. So that's kind of my mission here, and I look forward to continuing it in 2025. So as I said, I will be back in January, but if you are someone who follows the show and you don't see the new episodes come out the next few weeks, you now know why. But that will be after we get through this episode, so let's get to it on the Cannabis Man Podcast.
This is Tommy Chong, and you're listening to the Cannabis Podcast.
Yeah. Okay, it has been quite a year. 2024 saw a lot of cannabis changes. Just going to go through a couple of them. The big one, obviously, the DEA rescheduling news. Obviously, that's not official yet. If you've been listening to the show, you know that there's an administrative hearing going on right now. Not literally at this moment, but it's sort of ongoing, and it'll continue through January, possibly early in February as well. And at the end of it, an administrative judge will determine whether to reschedule cannabis under the Controlled Substances Act down from Schedule 1, which is the most severe and heavily regulated substances are on that list. Those are things like heroin. Those are things like, cocaine and, the most extreme stuff out there, heavily regulated. They're looking to move it down to Schedule 3, which is more in line with things like Tylenol with codeine, some caffeinated products, things that are a lot more loosely regulated. It also would acknowledge the medical benefits that cannabis can offer because Schedule 1 substances are listed that way because they are, in the words of the DEA, understood to have no medical benefit, which is obviously a joke and it needs to be changed. It's really just a reflection of reality. But we're still going to have to wait until January or February to figure that one out. In November, on the ballots in different states, there were several states that had initiatives relating to cannabis. Florida was the biggest one, and even though a majority did support recreational legalization, it did not meet the required 60% threshold to pass that. I expect Florida will have another cannabis initiative on the ballot within the next 5 years. North and South Dakota, they voters there rejected legalizing recreational cannabis. But in Nebraska, voters approved medical cannabis measures, which would make it the 39th state to legalize cannabis for medical use. I do have a news story related to that to tell you about later on, which I will get to. There were also things within the states, like Minnesota revising its licensing structure. They did a social equity pre-approval thing for their lottery, kind of like Illinois has been doing, but they decided to change that, and they're doing a broader lottery in the middle of 2025. So that's kind of exciting. And they said that it will sort of address legal challenges and ensure a more fair rollout. So that's something to look forward to in 2025 for Minnesotans up there in the Twin Cities. And there's been a lot of other things as well. Countries outside the U.S., like Germany, like Thailand, Ukraine is going to medically legalize cannabis early next year. So there has been a lot to be excited about this year and more to look forward to next year. And for cannabis news in or around Illinois, of course, you can listen to the Cannabis Man podcast. You can also head to IllinoisNewsJoint.com. Think of it as the joint you can hit for all your Illinois cannabis news and reviews. And some of those recent reviews include Singapore Sling by Grassroots. What a great name that is. Heavy Strawberries by Corner Boys, and Romy Disposable Pen by Dabstract. And Jason has an article here, Jason Brown of IllinoisNewsJoint.com has an article that I dove into on last week's episode. If you haven't heard about this, you should take a listen to that episode. But this is a major story broken by ABC7 here in Chicago. There is a facility that's been doing lab testing on cannabis results for various laws, and they are very tied in to DUI cannabis convictions. Anytime somebody's pulled over by the cops and they test them for cannabis, this lab at UIC, they are the ones who test those results taken by police, and those results factor in to what the courts decide to do. Well, this major breaking story last week found that UIC lab has been putting out flawed test results relating to cannabis DUI convictions. And so now there are literally hundreds of people, cases that is, and maybe people who are right now behind bars due to DUI cannabis convictions, and these could be all thrown out because of these flawed lab results. And this is a major thing, and believe me, we're going to be watching the fallout from this potentially for the next several months, maybe even years, because this is a very, very big deal. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, you can check out this article or listen to last week's episode of the Cannabis Man Podcast. Some other news that I'd like to include in this news joint wrap is relating to that Nebraska medical cannabis passage that I referred to earlier. There's a lawsuit which seeks to block the Nebraska governor from certifying the medical cannabis initiatives that voters approved at the ballot in November. This is from Zach Wendling in the Nebraska Examiner, and it's been republished on Marijuana Moment, which is a publication that I always use on this show because they do great work. I'll just give you a little intro here. A top opponent of medical cannabis in Nebraska filed a new lawsuit this week seeking to void two successful 2024 ballot measures to legalize and regulate cannabis. Governor Jim Pillen, a Republican, has until next Thursday under the Nebraska Constitution and state law to declare which measures were successful. John Kuhn of Hartwell, a former state senator and former member of the State Board of Health, filed his second lawsuit this fall against the Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana campaign, as well as Nebraska Secretary of State Bob Evnen. The new lawsuit was filed in Lancaster County, and it includes Pillen this time argues state-level cannabis laws are, quote, unconstitutional, unlawful, and impossible, end quote, and that the campaign's efforts to create and delegate exclusive regulation of the drug to a new executive agency is prohibited. Now, as this Nebraska Examiner article notes, 38 states have already authorized some form of medical cannabis, about 24 of which also now allow recreational marijuana sales and distribution. So I get the frustration in that quote from Pillen about it being impossible, because it is, kind of a joke, the way that we do this, where each state is kind of its own island regarding cannabis laws. And yet the overarching federal authority still prohibits it and looks at it like this Schedule 1, boogeyman drug that they're, so much so that companies in New Mexico had their legal product seized by federal law enforcement, DEA agents, and those agents, when they were confronted, basically shrugged and said, hey, we're within our purview here. This is still federally illegal, so we're taking your stuff and there's nothing you can do about it. That is the kind of, situation that we are in right now. So I do get the notion that this is frustrating and kind of impossible. But unconstitutional and unlawful, that's obviously not the case. And I do think that when this federal prohibition of cannabis ends, it ultimately is just going to be the feds getting out of the way and letting states do what they want to do. That's what they did with alcohol. It's not like the federal government ever said this is legal across the land. They just said, hey, we're not going to prohibit it anymore. You states do what you want to do. Most states, enthusiastically, in Wisconsin, for instance, legalized it. Other states like Utah, some areas of which have chosen to remain dry. That's the prerogative of the states. They get to decide based on their citizens what they want to do. Either way, I've linked that article below, but I thought it was worth noting for any of you Nebraskans listening, that medical marijuana initiative is now the subject of a lawsuit. That might tie it up in court for a little while. We saw that happen here in Illinois. So many licensees for recreational cannabis could not start operations for 2 years because they were tied up in lawsuits. And thankfully now we're on the other side of that, and we are getting a lot more licensed dispensaries on the market. Competition is bringing prices down a little bit. It's been a lot better these last 2 years. But from 2020 to 2022, it was not great here in Illinois. And unfortunately for those in Nebraska awaiting medical cannabis, you might be in for a little bit of a wait here. On the flip side, in New Jersey, along the East Coast here, one of their cannabis law enforcement units, the NJCRC, has launched an approval process for cannabis consumption areas. That's the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission, the NJCRC. They did raise slightly a social equity excise fee, which is a tax for those who are looking to be licensed cannabis distributors. And for what it's worth, here in Illinois, people have been complaining for years about the prices being too high. I have heard a lot of noise about high prices in New Jersey, and that doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon, especially if they are raising taxes. That's just going to be passed on to the consumer. But the good news here, the big stuff, is that cannabis consumption areas, the process to launch those starts January 2nd. So now there's a portal application process established in the state. There will be an uncapped number of consumption areas licensed. So if you are a New Jersey cannabis business operator, you can, along with countless others, apply to include a cannabis consumption area in your business. It is subject to local approval, so, you may run into some issues in terms of who's approving it, and it costs $1,000 to apply as a micro dispensary, $5,000 for a standard dispensary license. And they're also stressing ADA compliance with these areas. But that's good news. I was talking about this here in Illinois recently over the last weekend. I was talking with a friend of mine. We were in Wrigleyville, and I was taking him to that sunny side over there for the first time. And he was really blown away by being inside, but he also couldn't understand that you could not consume on-site or nearby legally. Now, that doesn't mean that people aren't walking around Chicago lighting up joints. I was on a CTA platform the other day and somebody walked by with a huge joint, just puffing away. So it's not like people aren't doing this. I've certainly done it myself. But you are technically putting yourself at risk of law enforcement if you do that, because consumption publicly or even privately outside of the few areas they allow it, it's technically illegal still. So my point is, the more places in New Jersey, in California, in Illinois, the more places that become cannabis consumption lounges, the more places that allow for people to consume, not only is it just a more enjoyable experience, instead of when you go to the bar, you want to be able to sit there and drink in peace. You don't want to have to buy it from the guy behind the counter and then, be mean mugged until you have to walk out of the store and, you got eyeballs on your back until you get into your car and drive home. And they're like, yeah, you better consume it there in your own privacy. Third spaces, these spaces outside of work and home for us, these are important for human beings. This is something I've read about a lot, and it was something that came up during the pandemic. People were worried about the work from home dynamic and how it was going to change society. These third spaces that we occupy, whether they're coffee shops, bars, libraries, you name it, but going somewhere outside of just work and home, it's important for us. So cannabis consumption lounges kind of check two boxes there. It gives you the third space, and you can also be there, buy new product, try it right there, bring your own, hang out with friends. The more of these, the better. Is how I view it. And then up in the Northeast, Massachusetts, recreational cannabis sales hit $7 billion as a milestone with a record-breaking 7-month surge, according to officials there. This is also from Marijuana Moment. This article from Kyle Yeager published today, December 13th, from when I'm recording this, and so you'll hear it out later. Massachusetts adult use cannabis sales officially have exceeded $7 billion since the state legal market launched in 2018. So 6 years in, $7 billion. With, as Kyle notes, $1 billion of that total coming in just 7 months. 7 months and $1 billion for cannabis. This is why I refuse to believe states like Wisconsin and Indiana are going to stay out of this forever. Same thing with Florida. Same thing with all of these red states that have still kind of held up roadblocks. Hey, Dakotas, if you want to stay out of this party, that's fine. Because your people are coming to Illinois, they're coming to, Nebraska when that goes. They're coming to nearby states, Minnesota. Wherever it's legal, they'll cross the borders and they'll buy them there and they'll consume there, and that money goes into our pockets. So if you want to stay out of the party, by all means, that's fine. But you're denying your citizens not only the pleasure of cannabis and all the innovation and the businesses and the fun and excitement of the industry, you're also denying your state this tax revenue, which I think is incredibly short-sighted. But hey, you do you. Anyway, Massachusetts, the Cannabis Control Commission there, the state reached the $7 billion mark November 19th, 8 days before the cannabis retail holiday known as Green Wednesday. Hey, something I brought up around Thanksgiving here. It's something that I've been seeing the cannabis industry really lean into. You may have heard me talk about it on that episode. If you haven't, though, this is an effort to create a new cannabis holiday outside of 420, outside of Snoop Dogg's birthday, which I think Jimmy Kimmel was trying to make into a holiday. And hey, I support that too.
That's enough.
Oh, sorry, Snoop. That's
enough.
He says that's enough, so I'll move on. But either way, Green Wednesday is this thing that people are leaning into. They say it's the second busiest day for dispensaries after 420. So the second busiest throughout the year. And as I talked about on that episode, it makes a lot of sense to me heading into the Thanksgiving holiday, knowing that maybe you don't want to go out again after Thanksgiving or on Black Friday. Maybe you already have plans. Maybe your whole weekend after that is set. Maybe you're out of town. Green Wednesday really does make a lot of sense as to why people might go to dispensaries and stock up before the Thanksgiving holiday. But either way, again, Green Wednesday, they said, in Massachusetts saw nearly $8 million in cannabis purchases alone. And as Kyle goes on, and as I just laid out, that comes in as the state's second best cannabis sales day ever, following the unofficial 420 cannabis consumer holiday earlier in the year. It was on April 17th of this year that Massachusetts recreational sales hit the $6 billion mark since the launch. And then, as they said, it has now been another billion on top of that since April 17th. So pretty massive numbers that we're seeing here from cannabis states. And Massachusetts, with the city of Boston, with all those college campuses, the Ivy League indeed, you know what I mean? That definitely makes sense. I think it tracks. And it just goes to show, I mean, states like California, Michigan, even Illinois, they get a lot of national hype for how much money they've made from cannabis sales. Massachusetts is crushing it in cannabis sales. So I like to see it, and I hope to see more of this as we move forward and as more states legalize. And speaking of states legalizing, I've got some products that I want to tell you about. And the first one is a fun holiday-themed product from Cresco Labs. You know, I love the sunny side at Wrigleyville. I go there all the time. Cresco is the big overarching company behind that retail brand of Sunnyside. They also, you see all the Cresco vape carts, you see the premium flower they have, and then they have their less premium line, their lower line of quality, but with great deals on it, High Supply, which I'm always buying stuff of because they run great deals. If you get some flour, some popcorn flour of High Supply at the Sunnyside, they're almost always running specials on it, and I like those price points. So I'm a fan of Cresco, but they released a holiday package of some limited time vape carts, and these things are really cool. They're the Nostalgic Holiday Strains collection. And you might notice on their marketing, it's the Holidays, like D-A-Z-E, which I think is always a fun play. And their marketing includes the tagline, "Taste the terps of the season." Really love that. And these Cresco holiday vape carts come in 3 varieties: Pine Tree Express, Grandma's Kush Cake, and Gumdrop Buttons. I have been able to try the Pine Tree Express and Grandma's Kush Cake, and I've got a pen of Grandma's Kush Cake right now, so first of all, cheers and happy holidays to you. You know, I used to hold it in a lot longer when I would take a cannabis hit, and then I got into an argument with somebody and they were telling me, like, there's no reason to do that. You know, they say that you're just kind of denying your brain oxygen. That's why you feel it more. That notion of your blood absorbing more of it, you know, your capillaries, the longer it's in your lungs, they're like, once you get beyond like 1 to 3 seconds, they said it really doesn't do anything more than that. So I've kind of stopped holding it in as long, but I don't know. How do you feel about that? Are you somebody that tries to hold it in for like 10 seconds? Or do you just kind of inhale and then exhale more like a cigarette smoker? Let me know. Text Cannabis Man at the link below. But I digress. The holidays package of treats here from Cresco, of the 2 that I've tried, I think the Pine Tree Express is my favorite. It's got the crisp taste of pine. It does put in mind a sort of woodsy, wintry freshness, maybe a fireplace in a log cabin, which always sounds unsafe, but also seems really homey and kind of puts you in the Christmas mood. The top terpenes are pinene and caryophyllene, and so that kind of gives you that little bit of focused and creative energy, and it puts you in a good place, and that really vibes with what I like to do when I'm using cannabis. I lean towards sativas. If you've listened to the show for a while, you've heard me say that ad nauseum, I'm sure. I'm somebody that tends to like to smoke and then maybe do things. Cannabis is kind of my Adderall. If I've got ADHD, this is kind of my way of combating it. And so I like to do stuff, and this Pine Tree Express really leans into that. But let me also say a tip of the cap to the Grandma's Kush Cake, because this is more of a sweet holiday treat kind of flavor. They describe it as cookie and cakey. I definitely got a little bit of that cake, and you get the top terpenes of caryophyllene and limonene. And anything with limonene in it, I'm a huge fan, because that is probably my favorite terpene. But Grandma's Kush Cake is more calming. You know, it puts you in mind of like that post-Thanksgiving or post-Christmas dinner lull that you get in, where now you're just lying on the chair, maybe unbutton the belt a little bit, let yourself relax, put on a holiday movie, and now you're just kind of chilling at Grandma's until sleep takes you. And that's the vibe that Grandma's Kush Cake kind of provides. Very calm, content, and yeah, throw on a movie-thon if you're just locked into the couch there. But these two, the Pine Tree Express and Grandma's Kush Cake, these things are fantastic. They screw into it. They're like universal carts, so you can put them in any pen that you've got. It's around that 75% THC, and these are liquid live resin carts. And people feel differently about, the oils and these concentrates that go into the carts, and how they're made really does matter. And for me, so far, live resin has been the best that I've tried. I'm more of a flower guy and an edible guy. I'm definitely becoming a beverage guy for sure. But when I do these vape pens and these carts, I prefer live resin. So that's what this holidays collection is. It's that flash freezed and extraction process from flower. And this is limited time, so get out to a regular Sunnyside, get out to your nearest Cresco seller, and look for their holidays collection, the nostalgic holiday strains collection, Pine Tree Express, Grandma's Kush Cake, and Gumdrop Buttons. I'm going to make it my mission to try the Gumdrop Buttons before the holidays are over, just because these two have been such a success over at my house, but I don't think you'd be wrong with any one of these three, and bravo to Cresco for, doing something fun around the holidays. I like these limited time products. I liked their wing sauce. I like these vape carts, the live resin they're doing, and I like leaning into these different times of the season because it's fun. I also want to tell you about another skin cream from Galena. Now, this is a company, I interviewed the CEO, Toby Ripsum, recently. If you haven't heard that episode, please check that out because they're working on some really fascinating products. And I talked about their Soothe cream, which is kind of a pain relief one that I put on my joints. That one stood out to me the most. They say it's their most popular. Not hard at all to see why. That stuff is killer. But I want to tell you about a different product today. This one is called Dream. And this is a nighttime rejuvenating cream. You can put it on your face, your hands. This is kind of a sleepy time calming effect. It's moisturizing for the dry air that we have now in the wintertime, and, we're going to be in this for the next couple of months here. Moisture is low, and do your skin a favor. I'm trying to take better care of mine. It is our largest organ. It is sort of our presentation to the world. It is how people kind of judge and perceive us, at least the first impressions and all that. Now, this night rejuvenating cream, I have been putting it on my face, kind of my under eyes and like the cheek area. They say it's designed to boost your skin's natural recovery process while you sleep. It's enriched with potent CBD and a blend of clean, nourishing ingredients. They say it helps reduce fine lines, boost collagen production, and restores your skin's youthful glow. They say it can kind of help with wrinkles as well and hydrate, along with helping fight acne. I haven't had any issues with that stuff, and I'm not necessarily worried about wrinkles just yet. I have been moisturizing for, as long as I can remember. My family has had skin issues, so it's just something that has become a routine for me. But what I notice, and what I really love about this, is the CBD. When they say it's a potent, addition to this Dream Cream, It is potent. And my wife Gretchen and I have both been putting it on at night. She puts it on her hands along with her face. And we've both noticed that it helps send you off to sleep nicely. It is this very calming effect. The CBD soothes and you can feel it hydrating. And then within the next, 15 to 30 minutes, you can feel yourself sink a little bit into the bed. Your eyes close, you exhale, and you're kind of off to dreamland. And we have both really been enjoying this, putting it on every night. And for the most part, we do have Violet here. Maybe you've been able to hear her in the background. I apologize. Just a little reminder of the growl that she'll sometimes lay out on us and what we've been hearing for several months, the last few months of 2024. And anyway, some nights we'll be woken up by that or other noises, and then it's not the most restful night of sleep. But barring that, the Dream Nighttime Rejuvenation Cream from Galena gets us down easy, keeps us down, and usually we do wake feeling refreshed, and both of us are going to make this a part of our regular routine because the hydration, the soothingness, especially in wintertime, and the sleep aid, this is money. So head to galena.co and you can check out their Dream product. It's in their classic jar and try it out for yourself. Let me know what you think. But for my money, it's good stuff. And I'm going to try and keep this train rolling. And let's let the holiday train roll right into this week's expert interview. Listener, welcome back. My guest today has an interesting journey to share with us and is part of a company which is making products that are really, really welcome in this space of legal cannabis, as well as its kind of, related, area that it occupies in terms of products that are out there and the quality of life improvements that it can offer. He is a serial entrepreneur and a visionary, having spent over a decade working intimately with herbs and psychedelics in that adjacent space, that is, and his business acumen, that is, has led to starting and selling a variety of businesses, from an Italian dessert company to a curated adventure tour company in San Diego. He loves high adrenaline sports and is exploring Desolation Wilderness, which naturally progressed into his current ventures, which is Function, a nature-inspired wellness brand on a mission to help people reconnect to their bodies and with nature through synergistic mushroom and plant formulas. And so here to talk about his journey and what it is that his products can offer you in light of those connections is George Moulton, co-founder and CEO of Fun Guy. Welcome, George. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Nice to be on.
So let's just talk about, your journey into this space, I want to talk a little about, where you've come from, with the adventure tour company and Italian dessert. So obviously you're kind of you're a little bit of a Renaissance man here, wearing many hats. So tell us a little about yourself and kind of what brought you into this cannabis and plant medicine adjacent space here.
Yeah, sure. Try and make it shorter than a long story, but
so it's a podcast, man. Let it breathe.
Yeah, cannabis was it was always a big part of my life growing up. Like before it was legal, I just was deeply passionate about the plant. I just really resonated with the lifestyle and the way it made me feel. But I also came into it very young, and that's kind of what developed my experience with it and knowledge, just being around it at such a young age. And then I grew up in the East Coast in the Massachusetts area, and then I was obsessed with snowboarding growing up. I was competing when I was younger, and that's what led me to California. The day I turned 18, I moved to Lake Tahoe, California to pursue snowboarding. As I was out there, that was I got introduced to the whole Northern California weed industry. It was the mecca at the time, and
sure,
that kind of just sucked me in. I had one, I could actually get my at that time you could go and get a legal script or a doctor's note, so I could legally possess it. And then I started meeting friends that I was snowboarding with that all of a sudden they came from second, third generation outdoor farm families, and I just had some experience going up to farms and working on the farms and just understanding the whole growing cycle and just every part of the cannabis industry in Northern California. I kind of just fell right into it. I was just obsessed with it. But as I was doing that, I was still trying to juggle snowboarding, and I got to a point where like I just had a few really bad injuries as I was snowboarding, and I decided to just make that choice to stop, to kind of stop going down that competition path and turn it into more of a soul sport, because just like the risk worth reward for
Sure.
that was just I wanted to be able to walk when I was 40 instead
Yep.
of just destroying my body for like I was like, what's the purpose of this? To It's not going to keep me financially stable as I'm getting older. So that's kind of why I just as I started going, and then I started going to school in Tahoe. But cannabis is what kind of just always I fell back on because I just knew it and understood it, and that's how I could kind of like that's how I could make my money, just like working in that industry. So I did that for I was in Tahoe for several years, and then I just kind of realized that like I knew I was never gonna work for anybody. Like my whole family's entrepreneurs, and I knew I always wanted to create my own thing. And food was always a deep passion of mine. So when I was in school in Tahoe, I was like coming up with my first business idea, and it ended up being like something around a food truck, like just simple first business to run, like low overhead, something that I can just learn ins and outs of running a business. And then that's how we came up with the Italian dessert company. It was just a very simple overhead idea. All we needed, it was cannolis that we were selling. So
Nice.
um, yeah, it was all we needed was cannoli shells, and we were filling them with ice cream. So it was just so basic. And at that point, it was just like a light bulb was like, no one's doing this. Like, let the girl I was with at the time, we started together, and we decided to move to San Diego.
Mm.
It just seemed like the perfect transition. Like I was ready to get out of Tahoe and like go somewhere where I could actually like start a business where there's a lot of people, good weather, and something that was near the ocean, because if I was leaving the mountains, I always have to be on some type of board. So like surfing was an easy transition for me. So yeah, I did that for a couple years. It was really fun learning experience, but I got bored. I did that, I understood it, and I realized like doing that made me realize like that's not what I want for like a long-term thing. So took that and we ended up selling that business to someone in Northern California, I think, and then the girls at the time, we kind of like went our separate ways. We were young, and I wanted to just go explore and travel. So I went like on a month-long surf trip with my friends, and that's when that whole idea with the travel type thing came in mind, where like we're young age travelers, and when you're traveling, it's like you always want to like get in with locals and figure out like what the locals are doing. So I hated all the tourist trap stuff,
Yeah.
and in San Diego that didn't exist. So it's like the whole idea with that was like connecting younger age travelers with locals that are willing to show them like all the spots that they go to. So then that like random idea came. It was like a passion project that I did. As I was doing that, it was fun. Started with another friend at the time, and I just being in cannabis, I was so used to like different income. Like it's just much faster money. I understood a lot more, and it was like I feel like it kind of spoiled my patience,
Sure.
because the tour thing, it was something that was going to take a long time, and it's a lot more energy than I thought. So at that time, a few of my friends like had started like big distribution companies up in Santa Cruz, and then I started like working with them alongside, just helping them out because I had free time still. And yeah, then I got back into cannabis for a little bit longer, and as I was doing like throughout this whole time, like I've I wanted to kind of backtrack and be like, I've always been focused on my health just because of snowboarding, the sport, like all the activities that I do. I've always cared what I put in my body. I've always cooked my own food and just been like really conscious about like not poisoning my body with a bunch of just shit food, or even just like pharmaceutical medicines, like just over the counter stuff. I've always believed that like anything my body needs to heal can come from nature. So that is kind of how I've always lived and thought. So like as I was growing up and getting older, I started just like learning more about um, medicinal herbs, and then I started like learning about functional mushrooms. That like as I've always had a passion for psychedelics because I was just very curious at a young age and liked exploring them. I never knew about functional mushrooms until about like 6 years ago. It started just like popping up as I was like learning about different herbs, and I think it was even just as I was like playing around more with psychedelics. And then I learned about lion's mane mushroom. So I'm not sure if you know about lion's mane mushrooms, but it's like one of the top functional mushrooms or most popular out there. But
Yeah. It definitely over the last couple of years, I've seen it pop up in so many more products, and yeah, I know what you're saying. But for anyone listening who's not familiar with functional mushrooms, what is it that distinguishes those?
So yeah, the difference between like functional mushrooms and psychedelic mushrooms is something that we like in my industry. It's like you expect people to know that, but it's like there is such a large demographic that has no idea what like with mushrooms, they instantly think psychedelic. They have no idea that there's like a vast difference between psychedelic mushrooms, functional medicinal mushrooms, gourmet mushrooms. Like functional mushrooms are something that are gonna physically benefit your health, like from what something that's gonna support energy, support neuro or cognitive function like memory, focus, libido boosters. There's a mushroom for everything, and that's what kind of intrigued me, especially with lion's mane because it was known to help prevent Alzheimer's and dementia, and that's where I kind of it sparked my interest. That's what sucked me in because my family had a history of that. So I was like, I want to start incorporating this to my life every day. And as I started looking more into lion's mane, then I just went down the rabbit hole and learned about all these other functional mushrooms. And me being an entrepreneur, I was trying to just look up all the different supplements that I could find online and start just doing my own research, trying them out, seeing what I liked, what I didn't like, what resonated with me, especially with like practices and sourcing. So as I was doing that, I couldn't really find an all-in-one thing that would suit my lifestyle and fit what I needed, because I knew as I was getting older, like my recovery time was slower, like all my injuries were catching up to me. I wanted to have something that was like all in one, that was like hitting the top areas that I thought were most important to me. So it's like I wanted something that was going to give me long lasting energy, like sustained energy without a come down from caffeine, because I was just drinking so much caffeine at the time. I wanted to wean off it. I wanted to also improve my memory and focus as I was getting older and maintain a healthy libido. I thought like that was just like an all-in-one thing that I wanted. And at that time I was trying like capsules, powders, some different like liquid tincture extracts, and just like as I went and learned about all these, my belief was that like the best delivery method for what I wanted was through a liquid herbal extract or tincture extract, because it's the most bioavailable way to consume. That was like probably a little over 4 years ago is when I really started like I had this idea that I wanted to create a product for myself, and when did it start? I'm trying to think. Like I had this idea, and then it was just funny the way with the friends that I was with in San Diego somehow just fell into my lap, where like my friend met someone that was like had a whole manufacturing facility in San Diego that made herbal extracts, and they were formulators. They just like, it was someone perfect for me to like start working with. So I hired them as like a consultant to like work with me on formulation, figuring out like the best ingredients that I can use to compile together for what I wanted. So that was like a year-long project of me just playing around with different formulas, trying to find something that like I resonated with, that fit me best, and that I was like obsessed with, that I would want to take every day. So I knew it was like something that I would actually consistently take. So that's when Function started, which was my first like the functional mushroom brand. So Function is our functional wellness brand that is meant to kind of help people reconnect with their bodies and nature through the power of mushrooms and plants. That's where it all started, because I love it. It's just very important to me.
Yeah. No, dude, I love it. You said a lot of cool things there that I know will resonate, with this audience, because I know a lot of my listeners are really, we're all here exploring natural medicines, because I think one of the things that unites everybody in this space, cannabis and psychedelics too, is what you touched on earlier, which is to say that nature offers so many great healing options. There's a lot, and as you pointed out, maybe everything that we need. And I know that there's a lot of people in this space who are disenchanted with the Western philosophy of medicine, which does rely heavily on pharmaceuticals, and it also kind of treats things individually. You get a problem that pops up, and then you sort of, they want to put you on pills to treat the symptoms of that specifically. Whereas a holistic healing approach we know now through many, many studies and just like the way that we live our lives, we know now and understand that things are, it's a group. It's like the entourage effect of cannabis, but it's that way in our bodies too. Your mental stress can cause back pain. You having bad dreams can cause nausea the next day or whatever, or anxiety. Your mental health and physical health are very, very connected. And so the plant-based, talking of medicine, like what you're talking about, these philosophies, this is really, really important stuff. And I think that your journey it does seem like it's a natural fit based on your lived experience and what you were kind of looking for. And I think it's kind of cool that, like you say, you're in San Diego and you meet somebody who just happens to know someone with a manufacturing facility. And it's one of those things where you're kind of walking down a path in life and you just find these people waving, like looking to help, or you see like a sign like, oh, hey, this random thing just seems to fit in with your current mission. And I think that those people are often looking for those things. And if you're on maybe the wrong path, it seems like they never come. And for somebody like you, it seems like that was really helpful along your journey. And it seems like you're able to then, when you're more in touch with yourself, with nature, when you're on a sort of a path of natural healing like this, maybe those signs present themselves to you a little more recognizably or whatever. But it brings us to function, like you said, where it's this whole notion is by giving people a way to work natural healing substances and supplements into their lives that'll keep them not, you said something important too, the difference between psychedelics and functional mushrooms. The notion, there are so many fungal medicines out there. There are so many species of mushrooms. And yet when you bring them up, people immediately jump to the psychedelics. Similarly to how they do with cannabis, people still think of, the stereotypical stoner of the reefer madness days of the 80s and 90s. We still have this stigma and connotations of somebody on a couch unable to string thoughts together or be motivated at all, when obviously we know that's not the case with cannabis either. There are so many things it can help with, like getting to sleep, dealing with anxiety, body pain, inflammation, and stuff like that. And those can be tailored. You can get the exact help you're looking for based on how you use it or what elements you use. So let's talk about fungi and kind of how that, you talked about tinctures and like the liquid form of ingesting it. Let's talk about the product and what it can offer people who are looking for these things.
So with fungi, it's a little different than function. Function was the herbal liquid extract.
Gotcha.
Then fungi is something that we are working on alongside that recently just launched in like basically March 1st of this year. So fungi is always meant to be the chocolates and gummies, like specialty chocolates and gummies helping people feel good ahead of psychedelic legalization, because the idea for fungi started as like a psychedelic inspired mood board. Like, what if psychedelics are legal? Like, how would it look? How would like a brand kind of be perceived? Like, it was more just like playing off a fun art page, and just started just seeing a lot of traction on like basically like the idea based off a cool psychedelic brand in the future. And then obviously the way laws are, we knew that wasn't possible right now. So it was like started seeing like as I was building like the brand kind of like idea online, it was just a lot of crazy feedback, or like just good feedback, and people loved the branding. So I was like, shit, we need to figure out a way to bring this into the market. Like people want this and love this brand. It's like just too good of a brand to like not
to ignore
or, like build out. So
for sure.
Yeah, so basically the idea was like, how do we do something like this but legally? So that's when, like, at the time I had met my co-founder Phoebe, who introduced me to Kana, which was when I learned about that, and like she told me about it, like it was just a very good option to give people like something legal ahead of legalization. Basically, we're using Kana isn't a pathogen from South Africa, so same class as MDA or sassafras, but it's fully legal. So that's what we use to like provide euphoric mood boosting feeling. And basically, I kind of skipped it. So like the whole goal with fungi was to create specialty fruit chews and chocolates that can replicate the feeling of like a true microdose of MDMA or psilocybin.
Interesting.
But obviously it has to be fully legal. So that's what we're using Kana as like the base, and then pairing it with some other herbs and functional mushrooms to replicate that feeling, so people can have safe legal access to something, basically giving them like, I don't know, something like training wheels to explore like before psychedelics, because there are a lot of people that are still afraid of psychedelics, and this is like basically like training wheels to give people something to like try out before going to that, because we call this the psychedelic adjacent space, because Kana is like, it's psychoactive, not psychedelic.
Interesting.
So is coffee psychoactive. There's a lot
Right.
of misconception about psychoactive substances too. People, say psychoactive, and people still think, oh, I'm going to get high.
Right.
They think, or cannabis or something. It's like not the case. There's so much education that needs to be done on that. But yeah, basically that was the idea with fungi products, was to help people feel good legally ahead of psychedelic legalization and give them some cool options.
I love that, George, because that really is an important space. You touched on the education, the need for that. That is very obvious, I think, to me and so many other people. But I love the talk of the psychedelic adjacent, too, because the training wheels, that's part of education. You know, you're learning to ride a bike, which is, you know, a dangerous activity when you don't know how to do it. But by gradually increasing your activity of it, and by doing it in a way that is structured, instructed, under the supervision of somebody, as well as with a little bit of help, you know, you're not just going down a steep path on the two wheels, which would be a more dangerous thing for someone who doesn't know how to do it. And so with psychedelics, I love that you brought up the caffeine thing too, because so many people are like, you say that it's psychoactive, and they're like, wait, like, no, it's not. I have 6 cups of coffee a day. Like, no, it isn't. But that's the definition. It fits. It still has some of those properties, and that gets to the educational need you're talking about. And I think I go back to this example when I'm talking about psychedelics, where in the animal kingdom, they stumble, a raccoon stumbles upon fermented fruit, gets drunk, has a great time, and will keep going back to that spot looking for that. But when animals stumble upon true psychedelics, they do not go back. They avoid that area of the forest that they found them in, because it was such an unexpected trip, because that psychedelic, episode for them was so shocking, was so altered. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people when they get their first psychedelic experience, and it gets to why what you're doing is so helpful and important, because they could really use a baby step down that path before they jump, fully out of the plane and try and, parachute down that journey. You know what I mean? When you brought up Kana from South Africa, to just tell us a little bit about the properties of what that does for people.
Like the properties of what the plant does?
Yeah.
Like what the plant can do for you?
Mm-hmm.
So it's insane how wide the varieties are, but like some of my favorite are just like, it can help with feelings of codependency, it can help with feelings of stress, anxiety, can provide like light and gentle euphoric mood boost sensations. It can also, like, the way Kana works is it can be, depending on what you stack it with, it can be energizing or sedative. So that's why like we're basing our formulas around certain states where like we have our first formula that's meant to be like an energizing one to help you achieve flow states. So what we're stacking with is something that's perfect for like when you're, say if you're sober curious and you want to go out for the night with your friends, but you don't want to drink, or maybe you want to drink less, or you don't want to take other substances that are going to keep you up all night. Kana is something that's safe that you can turn to, that's actually has a reverse tolerance, and it's completely non-addictive.
Wow.
So that's something super special about it. And yeah, you can, like, the way we formulate our gummies is something you can take them going, say you're going to your concert at 9 p.m., but you want to be home bed to your kids like by 12 a.m. It's like you can do that and you're not going to have difficulty falling asleep. If anything, we even have another formula that can actually help you fall asleep and get really deep rest. So
I love that.
Yeah, some of the properties can also just help with social anxiety as well.
Nice.
So it helps. It's what it's doing. It's like basically a vasodilator. So it's a heart opener. So it's going to help increase feelings of love, joy, and empathy by increasing feelings or blood flow to your heart.
I love that. Yeah, there's so much good stuff in there, George, and I think a lot of people probably perked up when you were just saying what that can offer, because I think a lot of those things that you talked about are things that people are looking for from the substances that we lean on that are more normalized in society. We've brought up caffeine and alcohol already. People lean on sugar a lot, whether they mean to or not. It's just so prevalent, like in our society, that it's a substance that we all are, it's very normalized and part of our daily lives and whatnot. So I think that whole the dealing with social anxiety, energizing but without being jittery or needing to face a come down, being a sedative but is not going to put you asleep immediately, let's say, but just kind of coast down into that and not feel groggy the next morning. These are things I know that a lot of people are looking for in their lives, because we all face various quality of life issues that make, just living on this plane more unpleasant, dealing with whatever that is. I mean, I turned to cannabis when I was young for help getting to sleep. It was just something that I'd always struggled with, and it still sort of functions in my life for that baseline purpose. But the social anxiety stuff and everything else you mentioned, that's part of it too. But we're still in this place, even as cannabis is getting legalized, we're still in this place where, like, the exact experience I'm looking for isn't perfect yet. I might want something tailored in any given moment, and I might get 50% of that, but I'm also left with some other sort of effects. You know what I mean? Like I want the focus from a strain, which I get, but then maybe I also get the munchies from it, and I would really prefer not to have those. Or I'm looking for a strain to help me, get me to sleep at night, but it also gives me intense dry mouth. There's a lot of that give and take that people are still kind of navigating. And you talked about the experimentation that you've done too, which is sort of so far been the only way to kind of help navigate these waters and figure out exactly what vibe you do want all the time. I think it's so cool that you guys are formulating products with this in mind already, that you're offering people these things that are specifically tailored for experiences that can help them without some of maybe those negative drawbacks that some of the things we talked about, like caffeine, where you do face that come down, or you do have a trouble getting to sleep if you have it late, that you don't have to deal with that stuff when you're taking these fun guy gummies and chocolates, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. And like we do, like basically what I believe is just kind of creating products. Like what we want to do with this whole thing is based around feeling states. So it's like our first formula we started with, like, it's going to end up being called flow state, because that's what it's helping people achieve. It's helping them drop in a flow state. It's meant to be paired with movement. And like the next one we're coming out with is going to be like meant to help you chill the fuck out. We're dropping it right before the holidays, but it's like,
ooh, perfect.
Calm your nervous system and just like be a deep, relaxing, like kind of give you like a little light body high of weed, but you're completely sober.
Nice.
And that's what we love about this. Like the products that we're creating, we're not trying to like get people high or get them fucked up. We're trying to just help them feel, and doing it in a gentle way where it's not going to alter their state of consciousness, so they can still go about their day, or they can like hang out with their kids or drive to wherever they need to go.
I love that. And I love that, as you said, coming out before the holidays, I think that relaxation is going to be really appreciated and used by a lot of people. And you again touched on something important, which is, kind of as we were talking about these getting altered, but the way I want to be, without any of the drawbacks, and you've kind of laid it out well a few different ways in this talk. And when you're saying, it's kind of like a lot of people, like myself included, might be turning to cannabis for relaxation, but I don't want to be too stoned to play with my daughter. I don't want to be too stoned to be able to interact with my family, but I do want that edge taken off. And so navigating the specificities of being like, okay, I want to be in this state, but I don't want to be too taken out of myself. And I think that we're in this place where that need has become very apparent to people. And I think it's so cool that you're offering these with fungi and function as well. So if people are looking for these, as you said, we got an energizing one, but also this relaxation one for the holidays, where can people find the fungi candies and chocolates? And if they're in a place where the function products might be available to them, where can people go to find these?
Yeah, the fastest, easiest way is on both our websites. We have our focus, like as we launched, was just to be in e-commerce right now, so we can reach people, like meet people where they are, just by getting to them through social and being able to have people that are like in the middle of the country, that this is like I'm in a bubble where we live. It's like there's everything's so easily accessible to every store we go in, but people that live in like dead center of the country or like anywhere else, like they don't have any options to this in their stores or whatever. So easiest is like go to fungi.com, fungui.com, or our other website function is Let's Function, LETSFUNGTION. You can also even order the function tinctures on fungi now, because some recent changes we've decided to do is kind of merge function under fungi to just simplify, because getting into this, like having two brands is much harder than I thought. It was just something that just kind of happened, and now we've started to realize that like the fungi brand is just like, we love function, but it's just such a more defiant, like prominent brand. So what we're doing is like we have the same exact formulas that we had for function, but now they're available on the fungi website with the fungi branding. So you can buy it on both there, or go onto both of our social media pages, which are at fungi, FUNGY on Instagram, and for function, it's at Let's Function. So find us there. You can even see videos of mostly my co-founder Phoebe talking and doing all of her educational stuff, some photos of her and I together, or videos of her and I together. We are available random stores from Massachusetts all the way to Hawaii.
Wow.
You can find our should have a stock list on our website, both our websites that show stores. We haven't done a huge retail push yet. Our focus has just been kind of keeping up with demand online, because we're still new, and it's a lot of demand to keep up with. We've sold out 3 times since we launched. So
that's awesome. And I can totally understand that, though, the demand, like you said, and I think it's smart to meet people where they are for a few different reasons. One is, even if you could get it on store shelves, like it's only limited in places where some of those can be stocked. And then even then, it's kind of like, which stores do you go into, and all of that sort of thing. It's a whole different ball of wax. So I think being online is great. And listener, as you heard right there, you can check out those websites and find out, get those products right from the sites, or see if you're interested in going into a store, you can find out kind of where they are nearest you. And I think I love the wordplay, playing with the name of fungus with both of those, with function and fungi. But I do think that, to your point, I think fungi, just from an outsider's perspective, somebody who's completely like just top level, surface level of these things, I think fungi is a strong brand. And I feel like you guys will be well served to just kind of keep making the great products you're making and moving them under that for people to get after and, give a shot for. So just one more time, George Moulton, co-founder and CEO of Fungi. Thanks a lot for stopping by and giving us the perspective and telling people kind of what they can expect from trying out the products that Fungi offers.
Thank you.
And there you have it, listener. I want to thank one more time my guest, George Moulton, co-founder of Fungi. Head to fungi.com and look at some of these products that George has. He was kind enough to send some over, so I've been trying them the last week or so. I got to tell you, I haven't really done stuff like this before. This isn't necessarily cannabis stuff, but there is some great stuff in here. And what I want to tell you about right now is the Perform Elixir. Now, this is a tincture which supports sustained energy, cognition, and libido with a blend of functional mushrooms and adaptogenic plants. Now, I am, again, when I wake up in the morning, I'll usually have some sativa with my coffee, and I'm kind of good to go. But instead of the sativa, what I've been doing is having the coffee and combining the Perform Elixir, either putting it right in the coffee or I'll just put it under my tongue, do the sublingual. And Gretchen's been joining me in this some days too, and both of us have really been blown away by this stuff. I mean, it does make you feel like a pretty generically good mood. I feel like that's helped me with that. The taste itself, not any problem at all. Sweet, like honey. There's no sugar in it, no sugar alternatives. What it's made of is organic lion's mane, cordyceps, holy basil, guarana, goji berry, rhodiola rosé, I believe. I might be saying that wrong. Panax ginseng and lemon extract. Ginger is also in there with water, organic cane alcohol, and glycerin as well. 1 milliliter in the dropper that is in the bottle is all you need. And they recommend taking this in the morning as the ingredients in here tend to energize the body. And, again, you can mix it with caffeine like I do with the coffee or not. I have tried it without coffee as well, and I like that quite a bit. The caffeine does energize me, and it's kind of my thing, but I have a dry month coming up here in January, and I'll be using this stuff without coffee regularly. So I'll report back and see how that is. But the benefits that they report are those increased energy levels, microdosing support, it improves endurance and athletic performance, along with adrenal function and focus and cognition. And they also mention the boosted libido, which I'm reading from the website funguy.com, and I didn't even realize that. That's not on the bottle. But deeper awareness of the body. The things that I've noticed are the improved focus, along with the energy and deeper awareness of the body. And that's been kind of just a nice thing to add to the day. I love starting my morning with this now. I think it's reasonably priced at $36. And these bottles come with 30 days of doses in them with that dropper. So it's basically like $1 a day, a little more. And I think that, it might be better than just your morning cup of coffee. It certainly has added something to mine. And like I said, for the dry month, I'm looking forward to trying this a few days without any coffee just to see what it does for me. But I think what George has done here is really, really fascinating. And I look forward to telling you about more of the great products from Funguy. But I really do believe, just like cannabis, I think that these mushroom-based products, absolutely you can find a place for them in your life. And I think you'll be happy you did. And one final news story that I wanted to share with you here. This is also from Marijuana Moment this week. And it's that cannabis companies are trying to avoid paying taxes they owe under 280E provision. The IRS says they're doing this without a reasonable basis. Now, this 280E has come up a lot since rescheduling has been talked about, because that's one of the things that, a lot of the people in the space have been saying it's going to change, and that's obviously a big deal. A tax write-off or credit, those are things that, that can be lifeblood for businesses right there. And so for cannabis businesses to have access to some of those under 280E, I understand these people taking a swing at it, and maybe some of them just thought, hey, I heard it was being rescheduled, so does that mean I can do this now? This article points out the IRS is very much looking into this, and they see that, unfortunately, this is not yet something that cannabis companies can take advantage of. And until it is rescheduled, again, hopefully early next year, that 280E provision is not available to cannabis business owners. Just jumping ahead a little in this article here, which is linked below, in order to establish standing to qualify for tax relief with that form, there must be a, quote, reasonable basis, which IRS describes as a relatively high standard of tax reporting that is significantly higher than not frivolous or not patently improper. The reasonable basis standard is not satisfied by a return position that is only arguable. End quote. I am really not even sure what I just said there, because that is full on like legalese in a contract, language. I'm honestly not sure what that's even about. Point is, what that says to me, reasonable basis means it's a subjective definition. The IRS ultimately gets to determine what's reasonable. And so right now, they are saying that it's not okay for cannabis companies to be doing this. As Kyle notes in the article here, only businesses that have nothing to do with Schedule 1 or Schedule 2 substances can take advantage of 280E. That is why the rescheduling down to Schedule 3, that's one of the many reasons business owners are excited about that prospect, because then you will be able to take advantage of 280E, but not before. So I've linked that article below. Check out more details there for yourself. A lot of good information, as always, at marijuanamoment.com. And I hope you enjoyed the information that I have provided here on the Cannabis Man Podcast. Before I let you go for this week and this year of 2024, I would like to do what I have been doing the last few weeks and end the episode with a little bit more of a happy high note, and that would be with some very short, 3-line, in fact, poetry that I like to call the high haiku. So let's light it up and finish off strong.
Growth like green gardens. This year's roots hold stories deep. Next year, blooms await. And that was the final high haiku of 2024.
Thank you, Reg. That's my buddy Reg Kiefer, who likes to come on and read the high haiku. So thank you, Reg, and thank you, listener, for checking out the Cannabis Man Podcast. If you've been with me just this episode or from the beginning, I really appreciate your time, and I hope I've brought a little something to you, and I really can't tell you how much it means to me to be part of this conversation, as well as, at this critical time when all this is changing. I really love being able to kind of do this and share this info with you, and hopefully change some perspectives out there and provide some highlights of good businesses and products that, we couldn't try a few years ago, was fully not allowed to at anywhere in this country or many, many others. And now that's changing every single day. So I look forward to what 2025 has in store. I hope that you enjoy the remainder of this year. Happy holidays to you, your family, and a very, very happy new year. And I will be back in January. In the meantime, check out any episodes of the show that you may have missed. And if you are still hankering for more, check out the Weekly Chronic. I will continue to publish newsletter issues every Tuesday. It's free. You can subscribe below in the description notes or head to Substack and search for the Weekly Chronic. If you want to hear from me in the interim before I come back with new episodes of the Cannabis Man Podcast, check out the Support the Show link below. If you click it, it'll take you to the show's Patreon page. I will be posting regular updates there. I will be posting guests that are upcoming in the 2025 season. I will be posting some audio notes from myself, videos possibly as well. I may even throw on a full episode of the Cannabis Man Podcast over these next few weeks. I'm just not going to do it through the normal channels that I have been until January. But if you want more and the thought of a 3 or 4 week gap seems like too much without these episodes, check out the Support the Show link below. And of course, you can always text the show at the link below, follow us on social media. And if you wouldn't mind leaving that rating or review, subscribing to the show, and telling your friends about it, hey, I'd really appreciate that too. Happy holidays, happy new year, and I'll see you in 2025 on the Cannabis Man Podcast. Bye-bye. Cannabis Man is 100% originally crafted by myself, Don Kleppen. Original theme music written and composed by Yusu Kim, aka Goodson.